Hey Bible believers, Israel coming here from In Their Word, and in today's video, this is day 79 of Through the Bible in 1 year. We're going to be covering Judges chapter 6 and Judges chapter 7. And if you want to know more about the book of Judges, then make sure you subscribe to the channel because we've got a whole playlist centered around the book of Judges. And if you want to know anytime we produce any sort of new video, then make sure you hit the bell notification as well and subscribe, because you're going to get instant notifications every single time we produce a new video. So let's get into today's Bible study video. We're going to be looking at Judges 6 and 7, and let's take it away. So today's text we're going to cover is actually really interesting, and if you've been following along with the theme through Judges so far, what we've had multiple people rise up basically after the Israelites have actually turned away from God, and God's raised up deliverers who have actually, in most cases, stood up to the call and actually delivered the people of Israel. Now, in the last edition, day 78 of Through the Bible in 1 year, we came to a departing from that constant theme, because we not only got introduced to Barak, we got introduced to Deborah, and we got introduced to Jael, okay, two pivotal women in regards to what Barak ultimately turned out to do in the end. And not only did that break the chain of Israel's sin, they forsake God, they go into captivity or some sort of punishment, they eventually call on the name of the Lord will raise up a deliverer, the deliverer will answer the bell and obviously deliver the people. Instead, not only did they break from that theme, okay, the other theme we kind of broke into was a bit more detail into the story. Now, perhaps that was based on the fact that Barak didn't actually follow through with his actually commandments from God, okay, at the beginning anyway. But now we're going to get into another kind of deep dive into not only a judge, but we're going to get a load of insight into what he actually did. So let's get into it. Judges chapter 6 and verse 1, and it reads, "And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of Midian 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel because of the Midianites. The children of Israel made them the dens which in the mountains and caves and strongholds." Now, this isn't anything new, especially if you've been following through our study. This is kind of similar to the book of Exodus. In Exodus, the Israelites got taken captive, and one of the things they did as captives was they built some of the key cities in Egypt. Okay, so just like in that situation, what we're reading about here so far in Judges in regards to this captivity by Midian is they started building up certain places for the Midianites as slaves. Let's keep going. Verse 3, "And it was when Israel had sown that the Midianites came up, and the Amalekites and the children of the east, even they came up against them, and they encamped against them and destroyed the increase of the earth, till thou come unto Gaza, and left no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep, nor ox, nor ass. For they came up with their cattle and their tents, and they came as grasshoppers for multitude. Both they and their camels were without number, and they entered into the land to destroy it." So what's happening here? Well, one thing that's happening here is the Israelites, obviously, they're taken captive, so they're doing work on behalf of the Midianites. But what is ultimately happening as well is they're doing the work, but what happens is when it comes time to reap the harvest, as they say, okay, reap the work of the labor that they've actually sown, the Midianites, the Amalekites, different people would actually come and actually take the produce, so they'll be left with nothing. Okay, so not only are you a captive, okay, you're not free, you're also being stolen from. They're basically taking what is rightfully yours. Let's keep going. Look what it says as a result. "And Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites, and the children of Israel cried unto the Lord." Surprise, surprise. So every time they go into captivity, it gets to a certain tipping point, a certain breaking point, and then they revert back to the norm. Oh, let's call upon the name of the Lord. He will deliver us, where his chosen people, etc. Okay. Verse 7, "And it came to pass, when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord because of the Midianites, that the Lord sent a prophet unto the children of Israel, which said unto them, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I brought you up from Egypt, and brought you forth out of the house of bondage, and I delivered you out of the land of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all that oppressed you, and drave them out from before you, and gave you their land. And I said unto you, I, the Lord your God, fear not the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Okay, so notice what's happening there. Okay, they cry unto the Lord. God is actually faithful, okay, to respond. Okay, and this is a kind of key life lesson for you and me today as well. Okay, anytime you're in hardships, anything like that, don't ever forget that there's someone out there you can call upon the name of the Lord and actually he'll respond. Okay, now God sends a prophet first and foremost. Now we don't get the name of the prophet. I guess ultimately the message is what's the most significant. And it's interesting, isn't it? Isn't it interesting that God actually compares this part, what's happening here, to what happened in the book of Exodus, okay? He's referring them back to that, the time where they were actually slaves, like I kind of alluded to already, when they're building up these treasure cities for the Egyptians, getting spoiled left, right, and center, similar fashion here, okay? So God's saying, look, I done all of this stuff for you. Look what it says next. 11. And there came an angel of the Lord and sat under an oak, which in Ophrah, that unto Joash the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress to hide from the Midianites. So we've already covered ultimately that when they basically work, okay, the Midianites, etc., will come and take it. Well, what we're reading about here is a man called Gideon here, which is going to be, I guess, the key character in our Bible study today, ultimately over the 2 chapters that we're going to cover. And he's basically working but doing it in secret. Now, this sort of reminds me, again, something in Exodus, when Moses' mother and father, okay, Amram, okay, and his wife had Moses. What did they do? It said they hid him for 3 months, okay? When the law of the land was every male child should be sacrificed, okay, once they're born and it's verified that it's a male child, should be killed ultimately, okay? But they hid him 3 months, and then obviously they basically let him go, and obviously he grew up to be Moses, etc., the deliverer of the Israelites. Similar kind of thing here. The decree has gone out. Obviously, when you work, we're going to come and take it. But Gideon here is doing things in secret, so he can actually obviously keep his reward. Look what it says, 12. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, The Lord with thee, thou mighty man of valor. And Gideon said unto him, O my Lord, if the Lord be with us, why then is all this befallen us? And where all his miracles which our fathers told us of, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord hath forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. Now, this is really interesting for a couple of reasons, but the big thing I want to point out to you is that what was the first thing Gideon said? Okay, the first thing Gideon said was, God, if you are really God, why have all these things come upon us? Now, I'm not highlighting this because what Gideon's actually saying is true in the sense, oh, you've given up on us, you've left us, all this kind of stuff. Kind of like it's God's fault, okay? But he almost similar to what Abraham did when God was telling him, look, I'm basically going to see Sodom and Gomorrah to see if it's actually as wicked as presented, okay? And Abraham kind of says to him, if you're God, if you're this just God, okay, is it right that you kill the righteous with the wicked? Now, God had already had a plan in place anyway, but it's still similar to what Gideon's doing here. And Moses did this all the time, okay? Whenever the Israelites fumbled and God would punish them, obviously, or God would want to wipe them out, Moses would turn around and say, God, don't do this because you're just and you're merciful and all this kind of stuff. And don't let the Gentiles look at you and say, oh, it was because he was weak. So always sort of challenging God to follow through with his character that he shows continuously. Okay, and look what it says. And the Lord looked upon him and said, Go in this thy might, and thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have not I sent thee? Now, why is this really interesting? Because Gideon, in some senses, called God out and said, look, if you're this great God of our people, why is all this stuff befallen us? And what does God say to him? God says, okay, you go and deliver the people, because I've sent you to go. Okay. Now this is similar to something we covered. You're going to see this I guess, time and time again, but similar to the previous Bible study video, which was about Barak, where God had commanded him, go to a certain place, I'm going to draw out the enemy and I'm going to give you the dominion. Okay, well, God says here to Gideon, look, you go and I'm going to use you as a deliverer. Okay, 15. And he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family poor in Manasseh, and I the least in my father's house. So, surprise, surprise, he was the guy 2 minutes ago saying, God, why has all this stuff happened to us? Why have you forsaken us, X, Y, Z? And God turns around and says, okay, you know what? You go and deliver the people. Now, the first thing he turns around and says, oh, God, not me. Okay. I'm poor. Okay, from the tribe of Manasseh. Okay, so he's basically trying to say, look, we're not even important. Okay, and look what it says. And it even says he's the least in his father's house. So not only is he trying to proclaim that he's one of the poorest from one of the tribes of Joseph, okay, ultimately, he's ultimately trying to say as well, he's not even the most important, okay, in his household, in his father's house. 16, and the Lord said unto him, surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man. Now, what's actually interesting in this is Gideon is actually being fearful, okay? He's not walking in faith. But the reason I'm bringing it up is not necessarily as a ridicule point, okay? But I want to contrast. Obviously, we're going through the book of Judges, so I want to continually compare and contrast what we've covered before, some things that will come as we're going through it, okay? And it's easy to look at the first Judges we saw, then look at Barak and say, okay, this is a clear divide. Now let's look at Gideon and say, okay, you know what? So he's broken the chain ultimately of God raised this person up, or God told this person to go and do this, and or this person stood up and went to do this, etc. Now we've had Barak who's turned around and said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to go. He ultimately turned around and said, for those of you who haven't watched the video yet, I'm not going to be the deliverer unless the prophetess Deborah went with him, okay? And it was conclusive for him. And because of that, Deborah basically prophesied to him and said, you know what, okay, I'm going to go with you to the battle, but because you did this, you're not going to get the full honor. That's why I guess we ultimately read about Deborah and Jael, in my opinion. Now, what is different about what Barak did and what Gideon did? Okay? Gideon's having a conversation with God ultimately. And although he's being fearful, okay, what are we going to see happen? He's ultimately going to go through with it, okay, after, I guess, multiple works. But it's a bit different because what Barak did, Barak didn't turn around and say, okay, you know what, do this for me, God, or do that for me. It was different. Now look what it says, 17. And he said unto him, if now I have found grace in thy sight, then shew me a sign that thou talkest with me. So Gideon turns around and says, okay, look, God, if this is you talking to me, show me a sign. 18. Depart not hence, I pray thee, until I come unto thee. Bring forth my present and set before thee. And he said, I will tarry until thou come again. Okay, so what's he saying? Look, I'm going to prepare stuff for you and then give it to you. Wait here until I do it. 19. And Gideon went in and made ready a kid and unleavened cakes of an ephah of flour. The flesh he put in a basket, and he put the broth in a pot, and brought out unto him under the oak, and presented. 20. And the angel of God said unto him, take the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and lay upon this rock, and pour out the broth. And he did so. Then the angel of the Lord, 21, put forth the end of the staff that in his hand, and touched the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and there rose up fire out of the rock, and consumed the flesh and the unleavened cakes. Then the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight. 22. And when Gideon perceived that he an angel of the Lord, Gideon said, Alas, O Lord God, for because I have seen an angel of the Lord face to face. 23. And the Lord said unto him, Peace unto thee, fear not, thou shalt not die. Okay, so loads of things I can pull from this. One thing's, and I've kind of talked about it a little bit already, compare this whole event, this whole encounter Gideon's having here with Genesis, where Abraham has his encounter, okay, where he does similar things. Okay, 3 men come to his tent door. He says, okay, you know what? Let me prepare food for you. Runs, comes back, etc. All of that kind of stuff, similar to what Gideon's doing here, etc. So there's constant themes throughout the scriptures that you'll see time and time again. Certain things that are similar, etc. Okay, but there's loads of different things you can pull from that. But ultimately, Gideon is basically entertaining, okay, someone significant here. And he's so fearful that he's actually seen this encounter. He says he thinks he's going to die. But God has to reassure him and say, okay, you know what? Don't be scared. You're not going to die. 24. Then Gideon built an altar there unto the Lord and called it Jehovah Shalom unto this day, yet in Ophrah of the Abizarites. 25. And it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, take thy father's young bullock, even the second bullock of 7 years old, and throw down the altar of Baal that thy father hath, and cut down the grove that by it, and build an altar unto the Lord thy God upon the top of this rock, in the ordered place, and take the second bullock and offer a burnt sacrifice with the wood of the grove which thou shalt cut down. So, take down the grove, the altar for Baal, make an altar for me, and actually make a sacrifice to me. Okay. Now look what it says Gideon does. 27. Then Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord had said unto him, and so it was, because he feared his father's household and the men of the city, that he could not do by day that he did by night. Okay, so a couple of things. First and foremost, we get some insights into Gideon and his dad. Okay, his dad's into idol worship. Okay, where he's got a grove for Baal. Okay, that's one thing. Or he takes part in idol worship for Baal. Let's just put it like that. Second thing, the scripture gives us some insights. It says he took 10 servants. Okay, why does the scripture say that? I think there's a reason why, and I'll bring it up in a minute. Okay, but the final thing I want to say is, well, isn't it interesting that it says he was fearful that he couldn't do it in the daytime, so he ended up doing it in the nighttime. Okay, now again, we've talked about Gideon's fear, and ultimately he isn't at this point acting the most courageous, but I guess ultimately at the same time you have to give him credit and say, okay, you know what, even though he felt fearful that he couldn't do it in the daytime, he at least still followed through at some point and did it in the nighttime. 28. And when the men of the city arose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was cast down, and the grove was cut down that by it, and the second bullock was offered upon the altar built. Okay, so the men of the city wake up in the morning, they probably want to go to the altar and make their sacrifices to Baal before the day or whatever. They come and they see that their altar's damaged, there's an altar to God, and the bullock has actually been sacrificed. Okay, 29. And they said one to another, who hath done this thing? And when they inquired and asked, they said, Gideon the son of Joash hath done this thing. Now this is interesting, and I mentioned this a minute ago. How did they know? It says they inquired. Who did they inquire with? Well, I actually believe that some of, if not all of them, or if not one of them, someone in that group of 10 servants probably came out and said, you know what, it was Gideon that did this. And it would be Gideon himself that would do it, since he was so scared. And look what it says next, 30. Then the men of the city said unto Joash, bring out thy son, that he may die, because he hath cast down the altar of Baal, and because he hath cut down the grove that by it. Okay, so simple. Bring out your son, so we can kill him. And Joash said unto all that stood against him, will ye plead for Baal? Will ye save him? He that will plead for him, let him be put to death, whilst mourning. If he a god, let him plead for himself, because hath cast down his altar. Now, a couple of things here, but the first thing I want to highlight here is, I've said this already, when you're reading scriptures, okay, and the more and more scriptures you read, this is what you need to understand. The more and more scriptures you read, the more connections, the more dots you can pinpoint and paint together, okay? Because I'm reading this particular part, okay, one thing this reminds me of is Elijah in 1 Kings, okay? He sets up this proposition with the prophets of Baal, okay, which is actually ironic since this is in regards to Baal as well, okay. And he basically says, look, you build your altar, I'll build my altar, and the God who answers, okay, by fire is the one true God, or is the true God. And they take up this proposition. They go first. They're there all day, basically, doing different stuff. And ultimately they start cutting themselves, and they're trying to do all these different procedures to get their God to answer. And at a certain point, Elijah basically starts mocking them, and he says, oh, where is he? Is he sleeping? Or maybe he's doing some business, or is he on the toilet, or where is he? Okay, and he mocks them. Okay, and then after all of this debacle, okay, he basically sets up his altar. Not only sets up his altar, he starts dousing it with loads and loads of water, okay? And then he basically says, look, God is the true God, and God's going to answer by fire, and God, right on cue, answers on the altar by fire, okay? Now, similar to this, okay, this is what Joash did. He said, look, whoever wants to come and kill Gideon, okay, for doing that, let that person die. Because what they're doing is basically saying that Baal is weak because he can't fight for himself, okay? And it's a really witty way to switch it back onto the people that obviously want to kill his son. But it's actually true at the same time, because they might be able to realize and say, okay, you know what? That's actually true. We messed up. Gideon messed up the altar, but it didn't actually mean anything. Therefore, on that day, he called him Jerubbaal, saying, let Baal plead against him, because he hath thrown down his altar. Okay? 33. Then all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the children of the east were gathered together, and went over and pitched in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, and Abiezer was gathered after him. So this is interesting, okay? Notice the chain of events. Gideon, that is, and God have this encounter, okay? Where an angel of the Lord, or the angel of the Lord, is conversing with Gideon. And after this whole event, Gideon is going back and forth talking with God, thinking he's going to die. And God said, okay, don't worry, you'll be fine, etc. Go and basically make an altar, make an offering to me. He makes the offering, and then he survives that whole situation. And now all of a sudden, what do we see? Okay, it says the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon. Okay, so it's through obedience. Okay, through obedience and faith in God, this is how God will actually produce even more for you. So he blows the trumpet. His family, I guess, the Abiezerites come, okay, and gather to him. 35. And he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, who also was gathered after him. And he sent messengers unto Asher, and unto Zebulun, and unto Naphtali, and they come up to meet them. And Gideon said unto God, if thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said, behold, I will put a fleece of wool in the floor. If the dew be on the fleece only, and dry upon all the earth, then shall I know that thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said. So isn't that interesting? Okay, after God has actually got him through the previous situation, what does he do? The people are gathered to him now, ready basically to battle. And what does he say? He says, God, you know what? If this is really you, okay, I'm going to put a fleece out, okay? And what I want is the dew to only be on the fleece, and everywhere else, all the other grass, I don't want there to be any dew on the fleece. I mean on the grass. And if that happens, then I'm going to know it's you, okay? This is the same person that was asking before for a sign, okay? Look what happens. 38. And it was so, for he rose up early on the morrow, and thrust the fleece together, and wringed the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. So he wakes up, there's only dew on the fleece, and he's basically squeezing it out like you would when you get a towel and it's all soaked, you start trying to drench it, and it's just a full bowl of water came out of that fleece basically. Now look what it says next, 39. And Gideon said unto God, let not thine anger be hot against me, and I will speak but this once. Okay, similar to Abraham. Okay, same thing. Let me speak but once. Okay, peradventure. And I will speak but this once. Let me prove, I pray thee, by this once, but this once with the fleece. Let it now be dry only upon the fleece, and upon all the ground let there be dew. So, reverses it. Okay, now don't put it on the fleece. Put all the dew on the grass and leave the fleece separate on its own. 40. And God did so that night, for it was dry upon the fleece only, and there was dew on all the ground. Okay, so God suffers him again. The next night, wakes up, sees that there's dew all over the grass, but there's no dew on the fleece. So after these two signs that he's asked for, basically, in this situation, he's ready to go, and that leads us into the next chapter and the final chapter in our Bible study today. So let's go to it. So Judges chapter 7 and verse 1, let's see what it says. Then Jerubbaal, who Gideon, and all the people that with him rose up early and pitched beside the well of Harod, so that the host of the Midianites were on the north side of them by the hill of Moreh in the valley. Okay, and the Lord said unto Gideon, the people that with thee too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, mine own hand hath saved me. Now isn't that interesting? Okay, and this is something you'll see time and time again. Even just to go bigger picture, okay, God even said when he at one point when he's talking about the Israelites, he says, I didn't choose you because you're the best. I chose you because you were the least. Okay, so it was a way to God to showcase his power. It's another example. When we've talked about this a couple of times already in today's video, but when God was bringing the Israelites out of Egypt, what did he do? Okay, he said, I'm going to manifest my power to the world by disciplining Egypt, basically, with all of my different signs and wonders, so they can see that I am actually the true God. What's he saying here? He's saying, look, I'm going to deliver them, but there's too many of you. Because if I do this under these pretenses, the Israelites might turn around and say, oh, we're strong and powerful and it's because of us. Okay, so look what God says. Verse 3. Now therefore go to proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whosoever fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilead. And there returned of the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. So what happened there? Well, a couple of things. Firstly, we know that there was 32,000 in total, okay, because 22,000 left and there's 10,000 remaining, okay. Second thing, which is interesting, God said, look, anybody that's afraid, okay, tell them they can go home. Now, why is that interesting? That's interesting because what does it say in Hebrews? It says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. Okay, so do you think that any of those 22,000 are pleasing God by being afraid? Okay, not actually having faith that God will deliver them. Okay, so God didn't want to use them. Okay, because imagine that people that are scared, they'd go to battle, win, but they'll turn around and say, oh, it was us, when it really wasn't. Okay, so God's saying, look, anyone that's afraid, send them away. Look at verse 4. And the Lord said unto Gideon, the people yet too many, bring them down unto the water, and I will try them for thee there. And it shall be. And before I read and continue, look at that. Now there's 10,000. God's still saying, look, there's too many. And we're going to get to a number which is actually something similar to something we've seen in recent decades or recent years, okay? And I'll bring it up at the time. Whom I say unto thee, this shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee. And of whomsoever I say unto thee, this shall not go with thee, the same shall not go. So he brought down the people unto the water, and the Lord said unto Gideon, everyone that lappeth of the water with his tongue, okay, as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself likewise. Everyone that boweth down and upon his knees to drink, okay, and the number of them that lapped their hand to their mouth were 300 men. But all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water, okay? So 9,700 men all lapped like a dog. Okay, they went to the water and they're licking like dogs. Okay, drinking the water. And God said beforehand, anyone who does that, send them away. The people I want are the people that are going to go, bow down, and actually be drinking. Okay, that way. Okay. Look what it says next. 7. And the Lord said unto Gideon, by the 300 men that lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand, and let all the people go every man unto his place. Okay, so from 32,000 we've gone down to 300. Okay, now that's less than 1%. Okay, less than 1% of the original number. That's who God's going to use to deliver the people. Now, what's really interesting in this is you have people all the time talking about, oh, the Bible's boring, oh, the Bible this, oh, the Bible that. Well, time and time again, you see key stories, key events, key things from the Bible taken into today's world and depicted for gain. Okay, well, one thing I'm talking about here. Okay, a few years back, what did we get? We got the famous movie 300. Okay, and what happens in that movie? 300 men in that particular situation go after war against this huge army. Okay, this indispensable army. Okay, it's like literally, for those obviously in know about the Bible, it's literally like reading the story of Gideon. Okay, but just trying to change it a little bit to their own desire. Okay, but it's pretty much the same story. Look what happens next, verse 8. So the people took victuals in their hand and their trumpets, and he sent all Israel, every man unto his tent, and retained those 300 men, and the host of Midian was beneath him in the valley. And it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, arise, get thee down unto the host, for I have delivered it into thine hand. So that night God says to him, look, go. Okay, it's time to go. They're delivered into your hand. And look what it says. 10. But if thou fear to go down, go with Phurah thy servant down to the host. So God says, look, if you're scared, go with this person. So we're going to know now if he's scared or not. Look what it says. And 11. And thou shalt hear what they say, and afterward shall thine hand be strengthened to go down unto the host. Then went he down with Phurah, his servant, unto the outside of the armed men that in the host. So ultimately, he's basically saying he was scared. He didn't want to go alone, or he didn't want to go down to fight. 12. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along in the valley like grasshoppers for multitude, and their camels without number, as the sand by the seaside for multitude. 13. And when Gideon was come, behold, a man that told a dream unto his fellow, and said, behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian, and came unto a tent, and smote it, that it fell, and overturned it, that the tent lay along. And his fellow answered and said, this nothing else save the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. Into his hand hath God delivered Midian and all the host. So he goes down there in fear, and there's a man who's basically talking about a dream, and the interpretation is that, look, this is the dream. Ultimately is basically saying that Gideon is going to come down and wipe us out. Okay, and what does that do for Gideon? 15. And it was when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation thereof, that he worshipped and returned into the host of Israel, and said, arise, for the Lord hath delivered into your hand the host of Midian. So it was their own counsel, ultimately, their own words, that ultimately defeated them and gave Gideon the confidence ultimately to do what he was supposed to do. And he divided 16, the 300 men, 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand with empty pitchers and lamps within the pitchers. 17. And he said unto them, look on me, and do likewise. And behold, when I come to the outside of the camp, it shall be, as I do, so shall ye do. 18. When I blow with a trumpet, I and all that with me, then blow ye the trumpets also on every side of all the camp, and say, so Gideon and 100 men went with him, came unto the house, that went 19. So Gideon and 100 men that with him came unto the outside of the camp in the beginning of the middle watch, and they had but newly set the watch, and they blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers that in their hands. So it's an attack by night time, okay? And this again reminds me of Genesis, when Sodom and Gomorrah got overtaken, and I guess surrounding cities. Abraham goes to retrieve Lot with his hired servants, and they went by night to infiltrate. Okay, 20. And the three companies blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers, and held the lamps in their left hands and the trumpets in their right hands to blow. And they cried, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And they stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the host ran and cried and fled. And the 300 blew the trumpets, and the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all the host. And the host fled to Bethshittah in Zererath, to the border of Abel Meholah, unto Tabath. 23. And the men of Israel gathered themselves together out of Naphtali, and out of Asher, and out of all Manasseh, and pursued after the Midianites. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all Mount Ephraim, saying, Come down against the Midianites, and take before them the waters unto Bethbara and Jordan. Then all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together, and took the waters unto Bethbara and Jordan. And they took 2 princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb. And they slew Oreb upon the rock Oreb, and Zeb they slew at the winepress of Zeb, and pursued Midian, and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon on the other side Jordan. So Gideon basically has ultimately delivered the people. Okay, 300 men is all it took, under God's leading and God's power. And that wraps up today's Bible study video. If you've got any questions about today's Bible study video that we've covered here in the book of Judges, leave a comment below the video, okay? Let's take the conversation further. And if there's any video in mind you'd like us to make in the future, you can put that comment, you can comment that below the video as well. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so you can get updates every single time we post a new video. And as always, don't forget to swim daily in the Word of God. Thanks and take care.